Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Leader. I appreciate all the comments. I first want to thank Speaker Hickman, Representative Nelson, Senator Sykes publicly for the hard work that's gone into this, and a myriad of others. And I think that it's important to recognize, and I respect the comments from both the senators that spoke about high standards. And I think there's something we need to realize. Common Core is a grand experiment. Common Core is a grand experiment. And it's a grand experiment that we are being pushed on the front ledge and being asked to take this step of faith that we're going to have higher educational attainment if we step out there. So we probably ought to look at New York. New York is in chaos. If we talk about chaos, we need to pay attention to what's happening in New York. The greatest determination of what will happen in the future is what's happened in the past, and New York is in absolute chaos, went from 70% passage to 30% passage. They didn't do a good job, as Senator Sharp pointed out, of doing the professional development. Like Oklahoma, other than the 10 to 12 teacher prep days that we go in and they tell them go to corestandards.org, and that's where you're going to get the information, and teachers after school are on corestandards.org or the State Department website, trying to figure their way through this maze, and we're saying come August, it's on you. And I tell you, we've done a real poor job. And I will tell you that forecasting what happened in New York is what is very likely to happen in Oklahoma. And as someone said, the majority of schools have already embraced this. Well, that's not the information I've gathered. The information I've gathered is you start talking to teachers. Teachers have been sitting, teetering, wondering if they had the time to go to corestandards.org and delve into it. And we've sure not created the time for them to do that. I want to talk about how we're being rawhided through the Common Core initiative. You remember Senator Ivester Rawhide? Don't try to understand them, just rope and throw and brand them. You got a lot of math teachers, some of you are hearing from, they're saying, I don't understand these standards. How can I teach these 40-year teachers in the classroom? But we're saying, well, hey, just forget if you don't understand them, just do it. Trust us. $300 billion investment from the ARRA federal stimulus dollars are going to assess them, and just trust us, they're better standards. Let's talk about what some of the experts have to say about the standards. Sandra Stotsky, who wrote the ELA standards for English language arts and math, or ELA in Massachusetts, who was on the validation committee, said these are not high standards and refused to sign off on them. Stanford University, James Milgram on the math standards said these are not high standards and refused to sign off of them because they were back mapped. They went to 12th grade and said this is what you're expected to know, and by the time they got to the foundation years, they had a problem. We're about to launch out on a grand experiment. So we pushed the pause button, and I absolutely agree with what we should do in pushing the pause button. And we're not taking a step back. We are taking a step back cautiously saying we are about to find ourselves in chaos. It's a step forward. It's protecting our students. It's protecting our teachers. Well, I would say also in the bill, Senator Burns, I wish he was here. He'd asked me the last time if this bill had anything to do with RSA. Well, there is one more good cause exemption that the bill has included that says that if you were retained in kindergarten, you may now use that in the 2 years of retention to be promoted to the 4th grade. Legal staff from both the House and the Senate have reviewed this. I have the documentation. It's the opinion of the staff that changes in all 3 bills, talking about another bill that did something similar, do not conflict, talking about the Hinkie-Stanislawski bill, and therefore can be merged together and all 3 changes will become law. One more good cause exemption you will find in this bill for retained kindergartners. And what about the 10th Amendment? All powers relegated to the United States by the Constitution reserved to the states or the people therein. What about the 10th Amendment? What do you do with that? Well, these are state-led standards. No, they're not state-led standards. Well, yeah, they are. Well, let's talk about, I'm going to steal from my colleague, Representative Nelson. If there's state-led standards, and on page 25 and 29 of this bill, when we say we can't do anything in creation of standards that ceded control to the federal government, then what's the issue with the bill? If we didn't cede control to an outside entity, then there should be nothing wrong with this bill. But apparently we have. And that's why this bill matters. And that's why maintaining independence on page 29 matters. Members, I'm going to leave you with one more thing. Now, I've questioned whether I do this or not, but I'm going to. There's a story in the Bible about Elijah on Mount Carmel, and he had to chastise his people. He said, choose this day who you're going to serve. Stop wavering between two opinions. I want to direct you to something. I think it'd be informative. I'm amazed how many people don't know this. So where our teachers are going to www.corestandards.org, they press the cursor on that website where it says read the standards on the right-hand column. And off on that webpage, if you want to follow along with me on the Senate floor, you can do that right now. In the right-hand column of that webpage at corestandards.org, you will see blue lettered, in the right-hand column you'll see read the standards. Click on that. And then below that you'll have a choice in blue letter to see English Language Arts Standards. Click on that. Then you're going to see a yellow and orange list that's going to appear on the right side of the page. And at the very bottom of that list, you're going to see something that says English Language Arts and gives you Appendix A, B, and C. Choose B. I want you to click on that. This is where our teachers are going to know what standards to submit to our students in the classroom. And you're going to find a PDF document. It'll take you about 2-3 minutes to pull that PDF up. And I want you to scroll to page 11. And then I want you to scroll to page 12. And you're going to read something right after you find To Kill a Mockingbird, which shouldn't, bother any of us for 10th through 12th graders. But you're going to find something called The Bluest Eye. It's in your schools. It's in a school in my district. This is suggested reading to help students reach the highest mark on Common Core assessments, because remember, the whole point is for every state to be compared against themselves. And so we're going to have model assessments paid for by the federal government, and that's going to lead to model curriculum. And what teacher who doesn't want the best scores on that test is not going to do everything they can to bring in this model curriculum, Big Money, Prentice Hall, Pearson's. And now, instead of us worrying about the buying power of Texas, we got the entire nation's buying power. Instead of us having a wall of standards for Oklahoma that somewhat more aligns with Texas than it definitely does New York or California, we're now subject to a lot more content and curricula to meet the standards. But it's just about standards, right? No. At corestandards.org, on page 11 and 12 of that appendix I just told you about, the bluest eye. Let me read you a little bit about the bluest eye. On page 162 to 163, it's going to be read to meet the ELA for 10th through 12th graders. Right now, if we come August, September, and October, this is what your students are going to be reading. A bolt of desire ran down his Genitals, softening the lips of his Anus. He wanted her F-bomb tenderly, but the tenderness wouldn't hold. The tightness of her V, and I will leave it to your imagination, was more than he could bear. His soul seemed to slip down his guts and fly, and I get so graphic I can't even read that. And then the gigantic, he made, removing himself, he grabbed his genitals. That's the bluest eye. I'm waiting for somebody to gavel me down, honestly. But we'll let it in our classrooms. Can't read it on the floor of the Senate, but we'll let it in our classrooms. Dreaming in Cubans, the next one on page 12. But folks, this is corestandards.org, where our teachers are going, and our librarians are bringing the books aligned to Common Core so our teachers can get the best, for their students can have access to get the best scores on those tests. So you want you interested about the Dreaming Cuban? Hugo and Felicia stripped in their room. Dreaming in Cuban. Dissolving into one another. Making love, whitewashed walls. It's so graphic, I'm not even going to read it. It's miserably graphic. miserably graphic. Let me tell you what you're doing if you don't vote for this. You are, next year, come August, September, and October, you are exposing your children and my children to amoral content that is unacceptable. How long are we going to waver between two opinions? 10th Amendment? What we say that we run on conservative Christian values? Here's your chance.
That concludes debate on the CCR. Senator Brecheen moves adoption of the CCR. If you're in favor of adoption, say aye. If you're opposed, say nay. Ayes appear to have it. I do have it. The report is